Welcome to the podcast. We do recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
Hey, good Friday, everybody. Good Friday. We are rocking and rolling.
It's not Good Friday.
Good Friday's in April.
I know.
Well, just like good afternoon
Do we have to start
on
over
a Friday,
again?
everybody,
Good
is what I
Friday's
was
in
meaning,
April.
right? Like, you
guys are loud.
You see how hard these
purpose.
guys are on me, Madison?
Good Friday.
I brought a coworker, a good friend, Madison McAllister, here in studio with us. We are going to talk about trauma work. We're going to talk about internal family systems. We got a lot of good stuff to get to on episode 127, topic discussion.
I've never met her.
She was highly offended that you didn't remember.
Highly
Oh my gosh.
offended.
Listen.
Worked with him for years.
Oh, for like a minute, A, and B, and B.
Forever.
That's for sure a period of my life I'm trying to forget. My memory is not very good anymore, but I apologize. I do remember you. I didn't,
Now that I reminded
didn't
you.
when well, for sure, but I didn't when I looked at you walking through the door. But
Should be a good one, everybody. Today on episode 127, we're jumping into some fun stuff.
we are.
Episode 127 is brought to us by Steps Recovery Centers. Steps Recovery Centers is an adult substance abuse and mental health treatment provider. Steps Recovery Centers provides all levels of care. They have a medical detox facility, multiple residential treatment centers, and outpatient treatment services reaching from the top of Utah to the bottom. Recovery starts with you, and at Steps Recovery Centers, there is always hope. Call them today at 801-800-8142 or visit their website at stepsrc.com to learn more. Episode 127 is also brought to us by Rise Up Supplements. Rise Up Supplements is a nootropic line aimed at optimizing brain function and supporting mental health. They have two powerful blends. Mindful Mood helps decrease anxiety and enhance mood, while Mind Shift helps increase focus and optimize brain function. Place your order at riseupsups.com. That's RISEUPS.com. At checkout, punch in promo code podcast20 to save yourself 20% off. All right. We always start off with new and goods. A little positive psychology, something kind of new, something fun's going on in your life. It's mostly for me to get my anxiety jitters out. You know what I mean? So let's start off with you, Madison. What's new and good in your life?
Well, 3 months ago, I upended everything and moved down to St. George to work with Steps Recovery Center as their clinical director in their residential treatment center. And just about everything is new.
Before that, you were working at Annie's house, right?
Well, yes, at Annie's house, and then for Deer Hollow actually, Steps Recovery sold me
You're like
to Deer
a
Hollow.
slave. You're like a slave
Yes, sold
You're
me.
like for sale.
I
might
think we
be.
all are to some degree, right? It's a good
I
point.
might be bitter. I might be bitter, except for they brought me back. So
There you go.
maybe I forgive them.
They couldn't live without you, so they brought you back.
So wait, can I ask some?
They kind of have a habit of that. They brought me back too.
They did. Yeah.
Never been brought back.
Well, you were the Mike Jorgensen days.
Yes.
Yeah.
He doesn't bring people back very often. I didn't get brought back. I have some real questions. Is Annie's house at one point? Annie's house was affiliated with Steps Recovery Center. Is it no longer that? Is it?
Yeah, it was bought by Deer Hollow. But
Okay,
it is,
so
yes.
is Deer Hollow what was once Annie's house, or is there an Annie's house and there's a Deer Hollow?
No, Annie's house is now just Deer Hollow.
Okay, so Deer Hollow is what used to be Annie's house. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
With all jokes aside, I do love
I'm trying not
Steps
to-
Recovery Centers. You
Yes.
know, that was it wasn't hard to come back because
No,
they
not at
treat
all.
you amazing.
Yeah.
They're really good, and we're glad that they're back sponsoring this podcast
I might even actually like the owners.
a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. Okay,
Yeah.
I love the owners.
Ty and Paul are good dudes.
Yeah, they're good people.
I've fallen noticeably quiet.
Doc, come on.
I have
you
to-
like golfing. You golf with them.
I have an experience with different owners. I'm not talking about current.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have as much. I don't have that much experience with Ty and Paul, but I had some experience with the previous owner, and it wasn't always that pleasant.
Yeah.
But I always
We'll
did love
leave names
Steps.
off this.
Steps was always good.
Yeah.
No question.
At one point, he was the medical director and the clinical director.
Yes, that's true.
I think I remember. Yeah,
2007
I worked with
to
you for I
2010.
don't know a while.
4 minutes.
4 minutes.
4 minutes, max. I like Steps. I really
But it's
did.
okay
I
that you
love
forgot
Steps.
about me. It's okay. You
Oh
didn't
my
wreck.
gosh! I haven't seen you in a decade and a half, and you expect me to recognize
she's-
right
That
off
is
the bat.
so wrong.
She's going to give it to you all podcast long. Okay, Madison, how long have you worked
Wait,
in this
how long
field?
is that? 2010 is when I worked at. It's been 13 years.
Well, okay.
Oh, since you guys worked together?
Yeah,
No, I worked at True North.
yeah, I
Entire-
know. I worked at True North in 2010.
Yes.
That's 13 years ago.
I heard that you owned True North.
Well,
that might be a
That's a
sore subject,
podcast
but
for another
whatever.
day.
that depends on who you
Let's
ask.
pretend that didn't happen.
That depends on who you ask.
Well, first of all, let's jump into this. So I'm super excited. It's not, a regular thing to have somebody like Madison, that comes in and can speak therapeutically to some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. So I'm super excited and grateful that she agreed to come on. This is going to be a real treat. Real fast though, Madison, give us kind of the credentials. How long have you worked in this field? What brought you into this field? I know that you're known for trauma work. That's why we're talking about trauma work today for the topic.
Hey, Sean.
Oh yeah, you wanted to.
Hey, Sean.
You wanted to hijack this? Yes.
Sean, what's new and good in your world?
Oh,
Never mind. Let's just let Jared go.
I completely forgot it.
Wow, that was the best hijacking of a podcast
That was
I've ever.
beautiful.
Way to
That was
go!
Keep going.
Sorry, what?
Okay.
Oh, we're back on track? Is
Yeah.
this what we're okay?
Yes. For time's sake, we're trying to keep this within a 50-minute episode.
Okay.
Not happening with me here today. Okay, I'll stop now.
No, you're good. So kind of give us the credentials, how long you've been working in the field.
Well, before I had the real credentials, I guess I've been in the field for about 20 years, but I was a life coach for a couple of years before that. So 20 years altogether, but
Just 20.
officially 18.
Okay. Okay.
I started in Vegas at a methadone clinic. Yeah, that's where I started.
Wow.
That was
So
it's been a while.
interesting start. Like how'd you get interested in, how'd you get hired at a methadone clinic?
Well, I hate to say it, but it was the
don't.
only job I could get.
Well, I think we've all been there. I don't
Yes,
think,
it was
don't
when
be
I
embarrassed about
first
that.
got out, and I was like, well, no one will hire me, so started there, and I really had no idea if I'd like to work in the area of addiction, but I love it. Oh, I really, street people in Vegas. That's where I started, and it was, I really love them. It was fun. They're very interesting.
It became an acquired taste.
Didn't take long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I also like working in our field, so I get
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
All right. Well, now that we've introduced Madison, go ahead, Doc. What's your new and good?
Oh, I don't have any.
Okay. Sean?
I'm just gonna sit out of this one today.
Okay. All right.
I got, my new and goods. My new and goods always revolve around college football.
Hey, it's coming up.
Yeah, we're like 30 some odd days away from college football. So I'm excited about that. Got my tickets. I'm on the 50-yard line. I'm good.
Nice.
Getting ready.
We're going to do a game again this year?
What do you mean?
Like, usually you invite me to one of the games.
Oh,
during
yeah,
the
but
season.
usually it's because it's my team versus your team, and your team doesn't play my team this
Oh,
year.
okay.
So
Now, when you guys go
We'll
to these
figure it out.
games, do each of you sit on either side of the stadium with binoculars and look at each other?
no, we sit.
That'd be more fun. You can just make.
Did you know
we
Terry
each straddle the
Sellers
50-yard line.
drives to Cougar Stadium, what is it, Lavelle Edwards Stadium,
Sure, whatever.
with BYU flags out both windows?
Oh, yeah.
It looks like a parade going down to
yeah.
the stadium.
Yeah.
And then he's decked out in head to toe.
Oh,
I think
I'm a
he even
fan.
has contacts in that say
I'm a fan.
BYU.
I'm a
Like
fan.
one of the games, he painted half of his body and just went in a Speedo. He's like that diehard BYU fan.
And no one wants to see that.
You
No one.
you
No
thought-
one.
Hey, speak for yourself.
You thought You thought that was a Speedo?
Okay, this has gone south real fast.
All right, let's get back to
All right.
podcasting. Let's get back to podcasting, shall we?
Yes, let's rock and roll.
Start us off. I'm doing fine. Sean's doing fine. Anything new and good in your life?
Oh man, a lot of new and good. Settling into the new old job.
Yeah.
Went golfing this morning with a group of dudes that are in recovery doing the deal. That was super fun. We got a
Sweet.
tee time tomorrow.
How'd you hit him?
You know, I've been using the junior clubs, so
Yeah.
I got to get used to the.
Jared had a set of clubs that he
here we
thought
go.
was a regular set of clubs that turned out to be a woman's set. And
My
this is
parents
not-
bought
no,
them for me as a
no.
graduation gift from college. I had no say in it.
Not meant to be this was not meant to be a sexist comment. The clubs were shorter than they should have been for Jared, and so he was hunched over a little bit more than he should have been. He couldn't hit the ball very well.
So today when I went, I was either 6 inches behind the ball or I was topping it every time. I couldn't get the distance of the club right.
We'll work on that.
Yeah.
That's just practice.
Yeah, I'm excited.
That's just repetition.
Man, it was
Okay.
pretty traumatic. And speaking of traumatic events,
We're going to
Madison.
talk about trauma.
Yeah, Terry, go ahead and read our little disclaimer about
We got a disclaimer.
a little internal family system.
This is Trauma Work, episode 128. Trauma Work with Madison McAllister, who I've never met. Madison McAllister. So, internal family systems is a psychotherapeutic approach that involves identifying and working with different parts of the mind or sub-personalities. If you are interested in understanding this topic more after today's podcast, do yourself a favor, check out a book called, Jared's going to hold it up here if you're watching on the monitor. The book is called No Bad Parts, and the author is Robert C. Schwartz. So, let's ask Madison to give us her sort of, I read what is a synopsis, right? But talk to us about IFS.
Well, IFS is a great way of dealing with trauma because when someone has a lot of trauma in their life, actually, let me start with everyone's sort of divided because with the way we deal with the world, maybe I might deal with certain things in my life from one part of me and another one with another part of me. And we become very good at adapting with the world that way. But when we experience trauma, what happens is some of these parts start to have extreme reactions to the world based on fear beliefs or deep-seated sort of what I would refer to as stuck points or requirements that are kind of maladaptive, and it's designed to keep us safe. So first off, we have a true self that absolutely knows our worth, and we know that we absolutely know that we're lovable and that we'll always get our needs met, that kind of thing. And then I'll have a part, maybe if I get traumatized early in life, I might have a part that starts to act out in extreme ways to keep me safe based on fear. So I don't know if that's too basic.
No, it is. And I just want to pause you real fast because I find it interesting. I've started reading the book. So typically the traditional thought is of the monomind, one mind.
Yeah.
And what the book is trying to teach us is exactly what you just said, is we have different parts of us, right? Or sub-personalities. And when most people hear that for the first time, they think of dissociative identity disorder.
Multiple
personalities,
which
yeah.
is clearly not even closely related.
known as dissociative identity disorder today. And if you've seen the show like Split, then you right, that's what comes to mind at first.
Yeah.
But to some degree, you're saying we all have.
Yeah, everybody has parts and it's a great way of dealing with the world. And but when it becomes maladaptive, especially let's say in addiction, you might almost every addict that you talk to will say they absolutely are divided between two parts: the part of them that wants to use until they die, and the part that wants to be clean and never use again. And then often those two parts are very polarized and they're working against each other. And then of course there's other parts that come into play. So
You know what's, I have a thought on that. I always talk about the Schmeagol and Gollum, right?
Yes.
We all have that, like, Schmeagol, who's this cute, good community member, likes, going
Trying
fishing.
to get along.
Right, from Lord of the Rings is what I'm talking about, right? Gollum is this good dude. And then you got Schmeagol, who once he puts on the ring, or for some of us with addiction, it's once we put the chemicals in our body, we kind of become different people.
Yeah.
And in early recovery, we constantly have Schmeagol on one shoulder and Gollum on the other. And it's like, so I get that. I can kind of get the split, right? Or that different sub-personalities.
Well, and then especially with addictions, you can add on. You have the addict, then you have the shame voice that's beating the heck out of yourself. I don't know if I can swear on here.
Good catch.
This goes on the radio, so we prefer
like
that you
it.
don't. But yeah, it's okay.
It's a pretty good catch. I like it.
Yeah, it wasn't a very good catch.
Don't be hard on yourself. That was a good catch.
Okay, I'm not. I'm just trying to keep going.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know. So you might have a shame voice that's constantly going back to the bad behaviors, but that is being done with when you're addicted, and then beating the hell out of you. And so the addict and the shame voice might be either in line with each other and feed each other, or polarized as well. So it's and everybody's system is a little different. But then shame, and the thing I want to bring up is this book says no bad parts. One of the questions you're going to ask me is why. One of the things I run into that is difficult about this, and I think the biggest thing I run into is almost everyone struggles with the idea that the addict part is a good part, or the shame part is a good part, or the anger part that loses their crap and just damages everything, all their relationship is a good part. And that's what I love about it more than anything, is that every single part is trying to help you in some form or way. And that is the hardest part that clients find, is finding the good. And I'm always trying to say, look, the anger part is one of my favorite parts, because that's where your voice lives. That's where the part says, enough is enough. We're not putting up with this anymore. And so every part has amazing skills and traits that they bring to the unit, that internal family unit. But when they go to extremes, can look pretty gnarly.
Man, yeah. Thoughts, Doc? You're kind of quiet over there today.
Well, I'm a little quiet for a couple of reasons, but here's what I was thinking first, and it actually is. As those of you know who listen to this podcast, Jared's a lot more organized than I am. I like to free flow a little bit. But your first question is kind of what's on my mind. What are you talking about? Sub-personalities, and you're talking about bad parts. You're talking about parts. You're not really talking about bad parts, because actually the name of the book is No Bad Parts. But the point is, you're talking about parts. You're talking about sub-personalities. What are sub-personalities? Name it. What's like a common sub-personality?
Well, the ones I just brought up, where you might have a shame voice.
So anger, shame.
Anger.
Okay.
You have small children that hold a lot of the pain that all these kind of real strong parts are blocking, just so you know. There's like these wonderful managers and firefighters that are always taking over when you have trauma anyway. When you have trauma, take over the system and kind of drive the bus, and are trying to distract, numb feelings, trying to keep the system safe from what they see is safe, when actually it causes a lot of problems. So we would call an addict part a firefighter, because they have a tendency to set a bomb in the middle of your life and set it off and then run away, and it's a distraction from the pain.
Right. Yeah, it's an outward expression of an internal chaotic system.
Yes.
And the other thing that made sense to me when you said that no parts are bad, and a lot of people will look at the addict part of them or the anger or rage part of them, and they think, so you hear people say all the time, right? Like, drugs weren't my problem, they were my solution. Mm-hmm. And so from that perspective, I can see how, yeah, like if you experience some trauma, you're going through some hard times, you have some overwhelming emotions you can't deal with, we self-medicate.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is. And in a weird way, now you got to be open-minded to this, and you got to be, experienced with this to understand it. That is how that addiction part or sub-personality of you is trying to help you.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I was, been trying to get to. Yes, exactly.
Which is mind-blowing, right?
Yes.
Because we demonize it and we like make it, and so it's kind of an interesting perspective. Yeah.
Well, they don't know what to do with all the pain. The system is always anxious and or depressed and sort of mood swings all over the place. They get triggered by everything that's around them. And so they're trying to either create fires or put out fires by numbing, and the shame voice is the hardest one as well for people to understand, is because they're just beating the heck out of you all day long, and just minimizing everything you do and reminding you of all your bad behaviors. And how could that possibly be helpful to the system?
Yeah, well put. I wonder, is the shame piece wrapped into like the manager? Because you said managers, right?
That's a manager, yeah.
Okay. So when the firefighters come in to rescue the person in pain through substance use or chemical abuse, typically when they sober up or, when that substance wears off, the managers kick in and go, how could you?
Yeah, well, that's the shame voice, yeah.
Got it, yeah. I'm starting to understand it.
Well, and the shame voice will say, when you really get down to the motive of the shame voice, it say, please be small, stay small. Don't put yourself out there. Why are you risking our heart? You're going to hurt us if you trust anyone. So the shame voice will say, why are you trusting any of these people? We will get hurt. So they're really often designed to keep you small so that you don't get hurt again. Stay quiet, just get along, don't have a voice. And then anger says, I'm sick of this, takes over, blows everything up with anger and rage, has a voice, tells everybody what they think. And then shame, tries to beat down anger. So this is a family inside trying to survive in their extreme reactions to pain. So I might have all these beliefs about the world that keep that alive. Negative beliefs, yeah.
It's fascinating.
So what's the problem with staying small? I don't get hurt if I stay small like that. Like, why do you want people not to stay small?
Well,
I have an answer to the question, obviously.
yes, of course. It's a good question because...
why? Like, I see why people want to stay small, because putting themselves out there occasionally can result in harm to them.
Absolutely.
Disappointment, brokenheartedness.
Sure. Yeah. I don't want to trust anybody else. The last guy I trusted, he stepped all over me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You keep bringing it up.
Yeah. So why, what's wrong with that? Why don't I just stay small? I won't get stepped on anymore.
Well, yeah. What I will always go to is true self. So I will have that part say, ask true self why. What does true self desire and need and want? And true self will always say, thank you so much for what you've done for me. Helping me feel safe, helping me feel focused. And we're not going to get our needs met that way. Because all I want is connection and love, and I want to feel, I want to be alive, I want to be happy, I want to be creative. And when we shut everything down and play small, then our true selves cannot live true to our desires and needs, right? And so the work is always, how does true self work with everybody starts to work together? And they create new roles for these parts. So have a discussion with the anger part and say, I love that you speak what we need. I love that. What do you think we could do that would be more effective rather than getting triggered into it? Can we have a voice without, going to the extreme and exploding?
Right.
Yeah.
this makes total sense to me because when I facilitate groups, one of the groups that I love to do is just an open process group, right? I have prompting questions, but really it's just to get a discussion going, right? And you see those people, you see those small people, I call them passive participants. They don't go unless they're called on. But when the opportunity presents itself, they usually, we're out of time. We'll get right back to that right after this little break from our sponsors, Steps Recovery Centers. Man, that first 25 minutes flew by.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs in the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
If you or your loved one is trapped in the cycle of addiction, there is a way out.
At Steps Recovery Center in Utah, we believe in second chances and new beginnings. Our evidence-based treatments, compassionate staff, and supportive community guide you on the path to recovery.
It is time to reclaim your life. Take the first step towards freedom, resilience, and a brighter tomorrow. Reach out to Steps Recovery Centers today.
Recovery starts with you, and at Steps, there is always hope. Call us or visit our website to learn more.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs in the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Episode number 127. This is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. Our special guest today, Madison McAllister, and we're talking about internal family systems, which is abbreviated IFS. And it's been deep. We'll get back to that in just a second. But before we do, step two. Part 2 is brought to you by the Hilton Garden Inn, the place where I stay most of the time when I come down here. If you've never been to the Hilton Garden Inn, do yourself a favor, go there. If you're traveling through southern Utah, give them a Google search. Hilton Garden Inn has beautiful amenities. They have a really lovely pool. They have a great hot tub. The rooms are clean and large, and the staff is perfect. Like, the staff's always really good to us. So if you need a place to stay in southern Utah, they should be your place, the Hilton Garden Inn, and we appreciate their sponsorship of the podcast. Now, back to internal family systems. I just learned I have dissociative identity disorder. Oh, that's not what we were talking about, is it?
I'm pretty sure I didn't say that.
We have I don't think you did either, but you know my brain. But we do all have sub-personalities and different parts of our personalities that do different things for us, or good things or bad things sometimes. But kind of that's what we were talking about, is how there are different parts of us that serve different purposes for us. And we had talked about some anger parts and some passive parts and some that sort of stuff. So let's move on to that discussion. So you look like you had a question just now.
Well, I just wanted to finish
Sorry.
my thought before the break.
Yeah.
So real quick, I'm learning this modality, right? Madison is very good at it. I need to find more time to get over and sit in on your groups and do your individuals and like learn from you, because it's one thing to read it in a book. It's another thing to watch somebody actively do a modality. And I'm always a better learner that way anyways. But from what I understand it and a little bit of experience I have with it, it's a lot like Gestalt. You can use the open chair concept. It's kind of a drama role play.
Yeah, I use Gestalt in all of my groups. All of them. I love it.
And
I really love it.
Yeah, Gestalt is a very powerful modality. And so just using this in combination with that. So what I was getting at is we talked about sometimes we have a part in us that keeps us small, right? And that's typically the manager, the shame voice beats us up. And you were saying that you can learn to appreciate that piece, but also ask it some questions like, what do we truly want? And I found that interesting because when I run process groups, which is the whole point of it is just to get open dialogue, open discussion, and have some thought which creates internal change. Sometimes people will not participate. They're a passive participant until they get prompted by the facilitator. So I use this little ball, right? And I always tell the clients, this ball has magical powers. Whoever you think needs to speak, I want you to toss it to after your turn. And sure enough, the ones that are very quiet and typically will not participate, once they get the ball, it's like it gives them permission, and that piece of them quiets down and they find their voice and they're able to share, right? Especially once they get a little bit more comfortable within the milieu of the group. So it's just interesting how you're saying things and I'm like connecting it in my brain. Yeah, it's awesome. Thanks, Doc. Thanks for letting me finish that.
So great. So how does this specifically, how do you use this to address trauma?
That's such a big question.
It is I'm sorry, it's pretty broad.
No,
too.
it's very broad and very, but it's, I use so many modalities. There's so much. One of the things CPT has all kinds of ways that you can look into the beliefs that you have specifically in your system based on your trauma. That's one of my favorites. So I might find out because of my trauma that I have a belief such as, this is one of mine actually, I only have worth if I'm saving someone. Or if I save the world, then I have worth. So that's deeply, most therapists have something like that in their system. And so let's say I'm going to work and I'm really agitated and I'm not in a good mood, and I know that I have to face this group because this group has been hard or whatever.
So it's a Monday morning, Monday morning?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah,
Actually,
I'm with you.
Yeah. So I will go into, and this is what I teach clients all the time. I will go into my system and ask, so I'm agitated, I'm frustrated, depressed, sadness, whatever it is, and I will ask my system, what belief do I have going on that's activated right now? And it will be, and I'll go in and think, you know what this is? Everybody needs to always like me, right? And so then I look at it and I laugh my butt off because I see that that's a silly belief and I've been working on it for a while, and so I can laugh and go, that is true. Okay, so today you can go in and even if they don't like you, you do your best job and you teach them what they need, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of IFS is tied to what does each of those parts believe about the world and what they desire. So, for instance, shame desires you to be small. So you would you might have a conversation with shame from true self to shame with empty chair technique. You write a letter from shame to the empty chair, which is true self. And then all this information comes out. Now, those letters are gnarly.
Oh, yeah.
They are not nice. Yet then with the psychodrama, you can have a conversation with that part and say, so what's your motive and what do you feel about this job that you've been doing? And a lot of times I'm exhausted, I'm tired. And so what do you bring to the system and what would you like to do instead maybe? And so you have a conversation and then to true self as well. So it's this lovely unfolding and relearning and unburdening of that part. And always, always, these parts are guarding the exiles from early trauma, and they are underneath all of this.
So the exile would be that trauma part or that trauma piece.
That younger soul, that younger part that still continues to live in the trauma and or hold the pain and the fears.
Got you.
And so these managers are trying to keep them safe, which isn't working.
Or firefighters, right?
Yeah, the firefighters. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they all feel very strongly about their roles and the importance of them. And so it's like having a conversation with that part and just saying, what can we do? Thank you for talking. And then, as I was saying earlier, true self will say, thank you so much for what you've done. Because they understand there are no bad parts and that every part has its role, and what can we do that would be more effective?
So every time I put my heart out there, somebody steps on it and I get hurt.
Yes.
There's a belief I run into a lot, right? And so...
what's the belief?
Yeah. Well,
what's your belief?
Right. Well...
I should never be vulnerable?
Right. I don't want to get my heart stepped on again. Right. It hurts too much. And I'll never find somebody that won't step on my heart. Right?
Yeah.
That's the deep-seated belief right there.
It's not really, I don't think that's actually a personal belief of mine. I have some of my own, but It's a belief
That
I
might
run.
be a belief.
It's a belief I
Yeah.
run into a bunch. Like
Yes,
if
yes.
I put it out there, somebody's going to step on it, and the problem is then that keeps them small, right? That's what
yes.
you're saying to me. Is that keeps them from getting into meaningful relationships because they're afraid whoever they get into that meaningful relationship with is going to leave them or is going to step on their heart or is going to make them feel terrible again.
Okay, so
Yeah, thanks. Pick it up from there.
all I keep hearing is Brene Brown, who teaches that
Sure.
vulnerability is the birthplace of all love and growth and creativity. And that's all I'm hearing. Every time you ask that question, I'm hearing that because where vulnerability is at is where all our happiness is. And that's what true self absolutely knows. And so that's what I will always say is that you're going to... This, I probably shouldn't say this as a therapist on the radio, but every relationship you're going to get hurt because we have expectations that don't get met, and then they're coming at you with their expectations, and we have to have good communications. And all relationships are kind of a messy sort of working together and trying to get our needs met and be loving and all these things. So we are always going to get hurt in relationships, which I don't know if that's a good thing to say, but
So
to me, it's knowing your worth no matter what anybody's doing.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like
underneath
addressing
all of
that
that.
codependent piece, right? Or,
Yeah.
right, like that. Yeah. Go ahead, Doc.
well, no, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I totally believe it. Like you're right. Everybody gets hurt in relationships at some points, but the alternative to the way to not get hurt in relationships is
To never be in one.
to not get in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you're going to get hurt in every relationship and you can't bear to get hurt, then you're not going to be in relationships. The problem is, of course, your true self knows that relationships are where you also can find true happiness.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's without relationships, you're alone in a closet at home, and when I'm alone in a closet at home, I'm going to do drugs,
Yeah.
right? That's all I'm going to do,
Right.
right?
Every time you say true self, I'm like trying to put an image to it. And let me correct me if I'm wrong on this, but when I think of my true self, I think of Jared at 6 years old with a towel and a bobby pin, right? And I'm Superman and I'm running around. I don't care what other people think. I'm just creative. I'm having fun. I'm playing with my friends, right? Social norms haven't really kicked in yet. I really don't have any heavy traumas. Like I'm just free and fun and creative. And is that kind of when you think of true self? Is that, I mean, help me
love that you're
understand
saying
true
that.
self.
No, that's exactly. I will often ask clients, when was the last time you absolutely knew that you had great worth and you were wonderful? And they will say 2, 3, like you're saying. If you have a ton of trauma, absolutely. But social norms, you're right. They ride on us. But the more, the worse the trauma and the worse the narratives and the stories that you create about the trauma. I haven't even talked about that yet. But the narratives and stories you create about the trauma is really where the true pain is. So a child who is ignored, beaten, abused in whatever form by their caretakers, they learn because of their own narrative that they must be a bad girl, bad boy. I must deserve this pain. I must have caused it. And that's the story and the narrative that a small child creates because of that. I mean, a child is supposed to be egocentric, right? I need to get my needs met. And so they live in that egocentric place. And so when everything happens to them, who are they going to blame? Not mommy and daddy, who they love. They blame self. And so then it's like a lifetime of learning how to, once again, see that that story you created is deceptive and not true. And it's just created to survive. If I know that I'm the cause of this pain, then at least I'm powerful there, because we're so powerless when that stuff happens to us so young.
Right. Yeah. And what you're saying too, and it makes me think of, is one of the most common forms of abuse in the substance, in our industry, mental health, substance abuse, is sexual abuse.
Yes.
And often I've had experience working with people with sexual abuse, and the narrative that they have in their mind is, I must have done something to deserve this, or my body reacted a certain way, therefore,
I caused it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which makes sense when you're saying like, that's where the problem is, right? Is obviously the action itself, but then they're living in this narrative about the action that continues to haunt them, continues to stay with them. And so through internal family systems, I know that there's like the exiles, there's the managers, there's the firefighters, there's true self. How would you go about addressing that? Let's say, for somebody that had physical abuse trauma or sexual abuse trauma.
Good question. It is kind of, you start from the beginning, and the first place you would start, from my perspective, is you learn what are the beliefs about the world. So we establish what do you believe about safety, about trust? What do you believe about intimacy? And so I will have them talk about what they actually believe about some of these basic ideas, and then start from the part of them that causes them the greatest pain currently in their life. So a lot of them will step right into shame, is often one. Some people step right into anger because that's the biggest culprit currently in their relationships.
Well, anger is way more easy than shame. It's much rather... Well, just I guess, okay, so I'm speaking from a personal standpoint. If something happens that hurts me, my first reaction isn't going to be to cry. It's going to be to get pissed, right? Because that's a way easier emotion. That part of me or sub-personality of me is way more comfortable than to break down and cry.
Yeah. But there's some people that can't find anger no matter what because they had I have a couple of clients right now, they had a very abusive, angry, sort of yelling at them all the time. So their anger part, or they were super angry as a child, so their anger part is hidden. It is deeply hidden down there, and we can't get to it no matter what. And it's kind of a fun sort of, so who are we going to talk to, and how are we going to,
And I also completely took us off course. So you were saying you establish their values, you establish their beliefs about the world.
Yes.
And then...
And then you start to just have a conversation with parts. So you might have them write a letter from shame. Now, I haven't touched on this, but shame every part lives in a part of the body. So I'll ask them, where does your shame live in your body? And they'll say, well, in my gut, in my shoulders or whatever. And I'll say, go into that part. And people who look at me like, yeah, you're a wacko. I can't believe you're making us do this. There's no way this is in my system. And they're kind of looking at me like, whatever, rolling their eyes at me.
Sure.
I'm going, oh, no, just open your mind, go into the body where you feel like shame might live. And these guys who are just, no way, will feel it like that. Because it's been a part of their, the vocal in the back of their head for so long that they can find it so easily, and it's stuck in the body. And trauma lives in the body, and it is stuck in parts of our body. And so just start to find it in the body. Where is it? Let's address it from there. Now speak from that place, that pain or that feeling that comes up. And when you speak from that place, it's clear as day, and they can just write and write and write and write. And then the psychodrama. It's amazing. So then the true self. And it's people who have been in residential for a bit, they start to get up. They're real excited because they want to speak from true self, and they want to speak from this or that. And it is really quite fun for me.
It sounds fascinating, and it kind of makes sense to me, right? Because then it allows them to be able to have that conversation from either anger or shame to true self, which maybe anger or shame hasn't had the ability to take a look at it from a different perspective from true self.
Well, and they've never had a voice they're always being pulled by the system, and maybe they haven't been able to actually say what they think and desire and want. And you can often say to a part, what do you want? What do you need? Mm-hmm. And they know. Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you ever do any letter writings to yourself in treatment?
No,
Don?
and I got to be honest with you. Some of this stuff is quite foreign to me, and I'm sitting here thinking, because I don't believe I've had any significant childhood trauma. Like, I had a pretty good family. I was not sexually abused. I was not verbally abused. I was not emotionally abused. My needs were all met. I honestly don't think I have any super significant childhood traumas, right? And so I sit here and I look and I hear you talking about, so you take the person who was sexually abused by a caretaker at the age of 4 to 6 to 8 or whatever it was, right? And then you take that person and you grow them up to the age of 25 where they're now in treatment, right? Mm-hmm. And you ask them to, so they have this sort of shame part of them who thinks it was the 6-year-old's fault that they were abused. And to me, that's completely foreign, because as a 25-year-old, I wish I was 25, but as a
hypothetical 25-year-old,
as a 25 times 3-year-old person, I can look back on my 6-year-old self, and I didn't have any of this, but to me, it seems obvious that it would never have been that 6-year-old's fault. Do they have trouble seeing that? Does a grown-up survivor of trauma have trouble seeing that they weren't the cause of the trauma?
Yeah, unless...
Because that to me is foreign.
Let me say to you in that, what you're saying. Everyone, from my perspective, this is the gospel according to Madison, okay? Everyone who has had an addiction issue has some unresolved issue, whether you want to call it trauma or not.
Or whether it's from your childhood or not.
Or childhood or not. Sometimes... it's something as simple as I felt that I could not live up to the expectation of my father, and your dad never beat you or was cruel to you, but something went on in the family that was an unresolved issue, and it sort of was a cry. I'm not saying it correctly, but is sort of something that always kind of sat in the back of your mind. And sometimes it's not something super heavy and significant, but it kind of has followed you in your thinking. And sometimes it's as simple as something like that.
So whether you identify it as trauma or not, it could just be a belief that you picked up along the way, or past programming.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I came from a dad that was a very hard worker. I mean, he taught me from a young age that, like, you work hard. And so the narrative, or what I learned from my past programming, is I don't have self-worth unless I'm a hard worker.
Yes, exactly.
Which to this day affects me, because I have a hard time sitting and watching a movie from start to finish, right? Mm-hmm. Because I constantly feel like I have to be doing something productive, which makes it miserable probably for some of my loved ones and the people around me, because, dude, Jared, just sit and chill and watch a movie for 2 hours, right?
Right.
Yeah,
so this is all kind of making sense to me, and it's
absolutely.
Frankly, I think it's astonishing.
And also personality types. I really love the color code. My therapist was the author of the color code, and I really, really love it. I've seen a lot of white personalities who are just these lovely, calm, very gentle, sort of easygoing people who use, because they have no voice and they don't know how to communicate their needs, and they hate confrontation. That's a personality thing that comes from a natural state for them. And or red personalities who are so driven and they're only as good as their last project. That's a personality type, and that will drive them nuts and make them feel worthless if life kind of turns in a certain way. And so I think it's so many different approaches and aspects.
Or the yellow personality,
or the
where
yellow,
they don't have worth unless they're the life of the party and having fun and people are laughing. And
or they don't want to be serious. They're Peter Pan. They just want to play.
Right.
And what's this work stuff? I don't want to do work. And raising children? I'm out of here. I'm out of here. You know.
Can you guys talk about other people, please?
Oh, Doc, what was that you said to me before that we got about 2 minutes? This has been fascinating. Thank you, Madison.
Super cool stuff. No question.
Get into the wrapping up of this.
Yeah.
Weren't you saying that there's only one significant piece that you have to do with trauma work? What was that? The only part that you have working in this industry that is related to trauma?
I'm blanking on what you're trying to ask me because I don't know what I said.
Before we started,
I couldn't remember
you're
Madison.
Like, yeah, you're like trauma work. The only trauma work I deal with is after clients are done visiting with me, they got trauma.
Well, there's that, right?
Oh,
There's that.
love you,
I
Doc.
do occasionally feel like my job in treatment is to tell addicts, no, you can't have Adderall, for example. Like that's.
Oh, that'll really upset them.
It seems like the most arguments I get into is when somebody feels like they have to have Adderall to function and that sort of stuff. So
I'm going to try to squeeze one more question in there.
Mm-hmm.
What should someone considering internal family systems therapy for trauma recovery know or prepare for their first session?
Being open-minded and willing to walk through the pain. There's a quote by Amy Crawford. You can go online and find it. She talks about walking through the pain. You must go through the pain to heal the pain. And a lot of people, they will do their entire lives will avoid pain at all costs.
Trying not to walk through it.
Yeah, will avoid it at all costs. No
matter what it takes, I'm not walking through this.
Focusing and being willing to experience the old pain and walk through it. And I wonder what's the narrative and the story that I have told myself because of the pain, because of what I experienced, and how do I rewrite a new story?
That's what we all do with drugs and alcohol. We avoid walking through the pain.
Absolutely avoid. Yes.
Which will not work long term ever.
No.
Yeah.
We're about out of time. That was a beautiful episode. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, Madison, thank you so much. And we want to thank Steps Recovery Centers for for continuing their sponsorship. If you're interested, come down to St. George, work with Madison, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks from now.
Also, check out the book No Bad Parts.
Yeah.
Interesting read.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Sups, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of its sponsors. This has been a production from a podcast studio.